You're listening to Polymatic.media, episode 51 for November 18, 2018. Welcome to the Polymaticast. Hey, John, how's it going?
Pretty good. Looking forward to editing this. Actually, being able to pick out the T in Polymaticast.
Do you want me to redo that?
No, it's fine.
Was it specific enough?
We're good.
Okay. Well, you won't know until you find out. When we're done here, I'll give you a couple of them. So you could just put them in your archive and just pull out, God damn it, oh, you didn't do it well enough. Clip. Which
Copy,
is exactly
paste.
what you did last week, right?
No, I didn't. I boosted the sound enough that I could actually get it.
Yeah. I did that to myself for like last Friday recording. I retook the line a few times because I was doing it in different inflections. And I liked the way I changed whatever I was improvising a couple times. The first time was correct. All the rest of the times are bad. And so what I did is I took the beginning of one phrasing and then I clipped. And you would never know.
Well, last week's episode was last
episode 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. I spent a lot of time editing it, more time than actually was, actually in the episode, times 3. Usually I go through 3 times.
Oh, really?
You wouldn't know, right? But I do try. So
with OG, I used to run it, just do the rough cut. Then I would listen to for a little, like I might do a leveling and then the rough cut. And then I might go back and listen to it before I finally say I'm going to do it. And those 2-3 hour shows would turn into 12-hour edits on my Tuesday night. Yeah, it was just bad.
So what I did last time, what I normally do is like I go over it. So first I get the volume right on certain parts, and then I start cutting, and then when I cut, like when I go through it, I listen to it at like the higher pitched scroll voice mode,
okay.
so I can get through it really fast. Yeah. So I can figure out all the I should make like a collage of all the ums that I have to cut every time.
I can I can look at the the waveform and go, oh, clip, then check it, and they go, yep, okay, I'm good. So I usually...
Yeah, the ums I can recognize the ums.
I can ahs, all those things. I usually can detect it. I'm wrong sometimes, but that's why you check it. That's why you have undo history.
The fun thing is where somebody uses and goes straight into another word, or goes from a word into
slurring of words.
Those are hard.
Yeah.
Those are hard.
Yeah, but
anyway, let's talk about editors.
Yeah, but not audio editing.
Topic this week. Not audio editing. We'll get to that at some point. Again,
side topic. So yeah, we're both professional devs. Let's just keep it consolidated that way. And so you had put in sort of into the idea bank of topics, talking about like Unix-based editors, but I wanted to expand to maybe something a little bit grander. Because that's not where I spend most of my day, but certainly I think this is a topic we could have. So how do you want to break this out? I kind of broke it out just at high levels, like integrated development environments, like IDEs, code editors that like they're really designed for you to edit code, and then there's text editors that are really code capable, that do little things like shift blocking and stuff like that, code blocking. And then there's other kind of editors that are really popular that are in that similar vein, that sit between full-on code editors and really like on-crack text editors. And then
the thing that started
right,
it all.
then your Unix-based editors, which are basically terminal editors. They're just editors that have a lot of like code-capable features in them.
Yeah. Well, the fun thing is there used to be like I think that it's still a joke probably, that there's like a war going on between people who like VI and people who like Emacs or other editors, right? So there's that was kind of the thing So the editor wars.
Yeah.
Which one is the best? But then again, we're talking about two different ecosystems completely.
Yeah.
So, there's always going to be overlap on things, and there's going to be...
I know people who are really proficient with Vim, and some people are like, no, Emacs. And what people would hate is I would use, was it Pico or Pine? Whatever it was. They made like a mail client. I think
Nano.
it was Pine was the mail client, but their text editor was, I think, was Pico or something like that.
There's an editor called Nano.
Yeah,
Nano?
okay.
Could that be it?
No, certainly not in 1993, 94. No. Pretty positive.
Oh, maybe. I don't know. I haven't.
I never got into.
That, so I do use Nano sometimes because it's like the default editor for the cron jobs in Debian.
Yeah,
so that's why I use Nano sometimes. Usually I use VI.
I don't know. I never really got into the super keyboard shortcuts. I mean, I do in a hybrid world with what I do, but most of my livelihood lives in a GUI and mostly not in a terminal, but occasionally,
You peasant.
Yeah, I know. But it's also, that's just, I mean, I'll drop into a terminal, but I'm not dropping a Unix terminal. I'll go do PowerShell, commands and stuff like that all the time. But I use them as I need them. I don't, it's just not most of my interfaces live in GUI. So, which brings up our first kind of topic of IDE. So there's a couple of them. Okay, not a couple. There's a lot. And we're probably going to talk about the kind of areas, right? There's Eclipse if you're in Java, right? So there's that. For me...
No, for Java nowadays, it's also a lot of the JetBrains stuff, right?
Yeah.
So they built the editor, the Android development environment.
Right,
so
okay.
That's what they did.
The Android Studio?
Kotlin. Kotlin gets transformed into Java at some point, I think. So... and if I'm mistaken about this, please correct me.
Well, so here's the only kind of, and I know that they couldn't. I don't know the history, so I'm not going to say that like Microsoft was the first to do the Visual IDE, but their main tooling is IDEs, Visual Studio. And it is simply that. It's a graphic-based tool. It's not like people are dragging and dropping flowcharts and making code. No, it's not. It's not that. It's not some kind of graph-based, mechanism like that. What it is basically a GUI-based editing tool, text editors with multiple tabs, and it has a lot of good stuff and has a lot of like the stuff that for me they're fine. For a developer who's starting out, they can get very convenienced by the wizards tools. Oh, let me pick a template. Oh, the template fills in 99% of the stuff. All right, I can scratch my name off and do a bunch of little things, right? And sure, Visual Studio's got that. It has a lot of getting started, but it also has a lot of, you can just create the blank, create new document, create all the basic things you need, create your file structure for you, and then you can do whatever the heck you want with it. And so Visual Studio's got a lot of that very easy preset things built into it, but it also has a lot of really amazing functional, stuff in there. Now, it's been around for a long time, so this is where there are things that Visual Studio did that none of the IDEs did that started to make their own versions of this. And this is definitely for fact. IntelliSense, the autocomplete stuff that you see everywhere, that was originally a Microsoft invention. And that came out of, as you coded along, it would start predicting. I know you're waving. And you could tab code complete pretty quickly, pretty rapidly. You're looking on Wiki? You're going to prove me wrong?
No, there's a fire around the corner.
From you?
Yeah. So you can hear the sirens right now.
Okay. Do you want to stop and run for the hills, or do you want to just be aware
of it?
No.
This is not California, man. This is not California.
Well, if you run for the hills, you're running into the fire there.
No, you'd be running into like a ditch because there's like... Can you hear this?
Have you pipe drill download something? I can. No, you don't need to bring it up. I can hear it when I raise the volume. Yeah, it's subtle in the background. Okay. Well, good to know. John, I hope you I hope you survive.
Yeah, it's right around the corner.
It's not good. How's the fires out there?
The fire brigade?
Yeah, you were saying in the months, like, the summer, it was a problem.
Oh, we don't really have that many fires here.
Right.
So there are fires, but not in this
Right,
area.
got you.
It's like there were fires like near like wooded areas, but
Yeah.
yeah.
So
Anyway, so back to editor.
yeah,
Sorry
so
about
anyhow,
that.
so this is just an area where there are, like, everyone creates their own kind of neat thing, and then everyone starts to copy each other at some point. And you could probably find a lot of the lineage based on to the editors who did it first, and there's a lot of that. But IntelliSense was one of those things. And for me, this is great. As I start typing, I can pick from the list real quickly and go forward. Also, it's also a good way if you're trying to learn a language or a namespace, like your library structures. You can probably discover lots of stuff and see the overloads and all those things. But in the same respect, if you're a new developer and you get very complacent and content by utilizing this auto wizardry for you, you might not learn anything. And that has cultivated, certainly in my experience, working with a lot of developers, has certainly cultivated a lot of developers who are not very good. They're very dependent on the tools doing a lot of babysitting, hand-holding for them. Visual Studio does a very good job at that, and it recognizes a tremendous amount of languages, and it has a lot of extensibility built in. Now, with that said, it recognizes Microsoft languages. Right, okay. But it also recognizes anyone who builds a language mechanism, extension into it. So it can recognize PHP. People have done Python. They've done, it does C++. It does Visual Basic. No one cares about that. C#. Does all the JavaScript, TypeScript, does all the things. So anyhow, Visual Studio is a very complete dev tool. It has ability to do a lot of extensions and stuff like that. And so that's what most IDEs are today. They're usually GUI based. They do a lot of IntelliSense things. You'll see a different naming for it, but it's that autocomplete for you as you type. It will do a lot of them are built in, have analytics built in that recommend naming conventions or usage or
code
formatting, which you can say yay or nay to, or give you suggestions. In the case of the later years of Visual Studio, they created something called Rosalind when they started doing .NET Core, and it's basically the mechanism that looks back at the language. So you don't just code for Visual Studio, you code towards Rosalind, and then Rosalind works backwards so it understands the language that you're writing as you're writing it, so it can detect problems as you're writing it, or recommend different things because of performance. And it's gotten smart backwards, right? Using a lot of machine learning and a lot of combo of things backwards. So it used to be you could type and then your system be catching up, but that's just not the case anymore for a lot of new stuff. So if you're someone more like me who can just code right off the top of their head, they don't need a lot of whiz-bang things to do things for them, Visual Studio is great for that. But if you need that, Visual Studio is great for that. And I would say probably most IDEs all have that same kind of thing. One of the main things that I like about code intelligent editors, is shift blocking, taking a selection of a block of code and being able to sort of indent it and stuff like that, or reverse the indent. The one thing that's kind of annoying, but I got used to it, is if you're just on a line, you have nothing selected, and you do Control C, and then you could do Control V, it basically will duplicate the line for you, right? It'll take the whole line. So it does a lot of code analytic reverse stuff. It does a lot of highlighting. It does color syntaxing. You can change all the themes. You could do all that stuff. It does multi-tabs. Has a really big community of extensions. Now, I say all these things, and I'm pretty positive all the other IDEs have similar stuff, right? Yeah. So, how is you predominantly do PHP Storm, right? And that's JetBrains IDE.
So what I've used in the past has been Notepad. I remember developing with PHP on like Windows 2000 and stuff like that. So yeah, it's been a while. And I've used Notepad. I've used Eclipse. I've used Zen Studio. So I've also used Aptana, which is like an Eclipse variant.
Yeah, I think I've heard of that.
Yeah, that was a horrible IDE. By the way. When you tried to load in your project and it was a little bit big, then it would like really freeze. So at some point, I had to turn off the code completion. And some people were like, they really lived by the code completion. They couldn't do it. And then I was like, happily going along. Anyway, so we switched over to PHP Storm a couple of years ago, and I haven't looked back since because it's been such a good editor. But we also used IntelliJ, which is like their main IDE for like Java stuff, and we use that for a Java project. That project's being killed right now by me, but it is, it was a good IDE for that too. I think that they really got their core strength there. They got the language that they use for that, right? And they have their language analytics and stuff really well in order, and all the integrations with all the platforms and stuff, like the libraries and stuff in there, like Composer uses. You can use Composer inside of PHP Storm, which I do not do because it's, I kind of like the terminal thing for that. So, but it's a good IDE for other stuff. I really haven't done that much, but I know that there is a Python version for this. I think. So I've been looking into getting into Python. I tried it in the past and was like, yeah, this is okay, I guess. Well, but it's like not really my thing. So.
One of the things that happened over the course of time with Visual Studio is they took it out of, they made it less a one-off product that does multiple things and turned it into a IDE framework environment.
Yeah,
and then they have
that's the same thing with
modules,
the guys from JetBrains.
Right, language modules and extensions that utilize all the services. And the thing that I didn't really talk to, one of the Visual Studio parts, the visual part, was that you could drag and drop buttons and things like that, eventually web pages and whatnot. And it would sort of auto assist and allow you to, compose native UIs and junk like that. And because of that sort of language, separation, they're able to do mono things, right? Where mono or Xamarin, where you can build, using whatever your favorite language, like build in Python and build an Android app, right? You could.
Have you tried out Writer? Have you tried out Writer?
No, because I know it's a Visual Studio does all the things that I need, and at work, the one thing they pay for is at least a professional version. Now, when I'm at home, I bought it. I've bought full tilt Visual Studio for myself for my coding projects in the past. It's a lot of money, but the Community Edition does exactly all that I need. The one little minor thing that, like, the version I get at work that I don't get with the Community Edition is something called CodeLens. So what it does is if I create a method, if I click over the method, it tells me how many references I have and where they are. However, what I can do is I can do a command set, and it will give me all the references, and it gives me a list, and I can go find the line number and the reference and see the overloads and all the things for it pretty easily. And, again, if you see a reference to something that's used in the method, a code block, and you want to go find where that original method is, you just hit F12 and it takes you there. Like, a lot of the things that are available in the Community Edition are just right up front available, unless you care about making Office modules for Office 365, right? Unless you care about some of that, like, very specific things and some like CodeLens stuff. Like, outside of that, you can get around, and I prefer to write my HTML or my Razor or whatever it is, like me. I like to do that because I'm very capable of that. I'm very capable of writing the CSS and the JavaScript off the top of my head. I really don't need some tool to do it for me. And that's the only kind of...
Well, that's not that's not what these type of tools are
Right,
for, right?
they're not.
Well, they can do
Right,
it.
they can.
Just,
And they're all
you don't
loaded
have
with these
to.
preset things and the little snippets, and then you can drag and drop your web page to the thing, and you go, okay, but you don't need this, you don't need that. Why are you doing that? You don't need a style reference here. Why don't you just create the CSS here? And so it can usurp a dev's interest to learn, or need to learn.
But is there a reason why you're not have you tried it?
What, Writer?
Yeah.
Because Visual Studio does everything that I need it to do. There's real no reason for me to use Writer. You know, the kinds of things that.
I was just curious if you have.
Yeah,
if you
no,
had,
I mean I've heard of it.
I haven't actually seen it before, like yesterday.
Yeah,
so.
no, I know
Like,
JetBrains makes a
this is
lot of stuff.
interesting.
They used to make a bunch of things for Visual Studio and stuff like that. And I think by a lot of the lessons is of doing that with a lot of IDEs and then eventually kind of creating their own. You know, they've gotten really good at these things. But if you work in an environment that will pay for that stuff, hundreds or thousands of dollars per head, yeah, these tools could be really nice.
Well, that's the thing. The IDE for like PHP Storm is not that expensive.
Right.
Even for me as a person, I buy PHP Storm for myself, right? So I have a license for myself, and I have a license for the office, for my work PC, for my work Mac, and my home Mac. I have my own license. So I pay for it myself, and the personal licenses are a lot cheaper, like $75 or something per year. So that's they used to have like a permanent license, and when you buy a license for a year, you get that license for that version, like the latest version in your year, and that's like a permanent fallback license. So you can still use the software after you stop getting your license. So unless they change that, and if they change it, please correct me.
Yeah, the one thing that they added in the 2017 version of Visual Studio, and obviously it's going to be more in like 2019. They added live share, which is allowing you to sort of like collaboratively and actively like share a code screen, and you can code with two people or multiple people at once.
That sounds like a security risk.
But sure. But I mean, you have to enable it. It's not like. So the advantage is if you work with people in remote
how does that work,
locations.
by the way? Is that like somebody you take over somebody's screen or something, or is it like a Skype screen
You have
share or something?
to, just like anything, when you have to go through a secure exchange and enable it. You can't just remotely take over someone's screen. Like they have to say accept it, and just like you do with Skype or whatever it is. And what.
But they can somebody else can type on your
Sure, if you
ID.
give them the permission to do that, they could code for you. So you could. So in the cases when you have remoting, you can both share, at least a tab or a couple tabs or something, right? So and they've extended this down into their free code editor too. It's neat. I haven't had any use cases where I work because most of the devs that I work with, they come knock on my door, right, or they come up to my cube and whatever it is, and they can talk to me. There's one person that's remote, and she's been moved on to other projects, just because that's the nature of the way things work at work. But her and I would have benefited from that. Instead of her sending me a snippet of something in Slack and then me looking at it and go, oh, well, here, let me recode it for you. How does that look? Oh, okay, now I understand. Here's the irony. Editors can't use language well with each other, but they can look at code, and sometimes they can understand much better than using actual words.
Yeah. I got a cool story about that, but I'll tell it later.
So I mean, that's a feature that they extended, and I thought that was kind of nice. Now,
I've heard about this thing before, but what I think about I think the problem here is also an IP problem, because as soon as you get this and something gets streamed like to somewhere else, where does it go? Where does that information go? Like, is like sharing parts of your code? Is that code floating somewhere on the internet? Like, where's it going?
These are all good questions, and at least Visual Code is
If something like this would be in PHP Storm, I would not be using PHP Storm or really disable
you have
it.
to enable the plugin. You have to add the plugin, the extension.
Oh, so it's a plugin.
It just doesn't come there by default. You have to turn it on, enable it, install it, and then utilize it. And again, it's a point-to-point thing. So it's not like they're...
Yeah, but point-to-point can also be intercepted,
sure,
right?
Everything can be. Let's not go down to a paranoid security thing because everything is hackable.
Wait, let me get my roll of tinfoil.
Yeah. Put your hat on.
I got some hats to fold.
No. So, I mean, yes, you don't want to live in a very careless, insecure, I don't really care, everything's hackable because Alan said so world. You don't want to get careless. But these things are thought out, right? There's a huge risk for Microsoft to make that mistake. So I give them some credit for having worked that out. However, it's available. Their Visual Code Editor is open source. So if you really care, you can go download and figure out what's going on in there, right? You can look at the source code. So, but so there's some...
Should we step down a little bit? So should we go like besides using our primary IDEs, right? So we're going to be, you could talk about like primary IDEs for like years.
Yeah. And so this is a good segue because I don't just use one, I use a few actually altogether. So while I'm working on things.
So one other thing that I want to point out is that you put into the notes, you put like code editors to discuss. Like Visual Studio Code.
Yep.
And I suggested Atom.io yesterday because it was like something that I tried to use as a replacement for another tool that I use. So I want to step down a little bit to like another level of like the normal editors we use besides our primary IDEs or code editors. So,
but I want to definitely come back to the code editors because I think there's some value there for me to at least talk about.
Okay, let's go there now. Let's go there now.
Okay. So Atom was pretty early. I think it was made by GitHub, right? As sort of an alternative. Visual Studio had been predominantly, I don't know, maybe the last 10 years they've had a community or express version which has been free. But in recent days, especially when they started working on their core framework project, they just created a free code editor that is cross-platform. Now, with that also said, Visual Studio, I think in 2017, and then absolutely more so, even to like Unix, or Linux specifically, like Ubuntu, 2019 version of 2019 is going to be completely cross-platform altogether. I think you can get a Visual Studio for Mac, but I don't think it's like exactly properly in line where the 2019 version is going to be full tilt like it is in Windows. It's going to be the same in Mac. But to that point, they created something called Visual Code, Visual Studio Code, which again, free cross-platform. And it has a lot of extensions. And it's very similar to Atom, but based on a more recent assessment, I think Visual Studio Code is a little bit more interested in supporting everybody versus Atom, because Atom didn't have a lot of packages and stuff that I would be looking for as like.
When did you last use it?
I checked it out, yesterday when I was at work. Yeah. I installed it, I looked at it and go, oh yeah, this is very similar to Visual Code. Now, Atom I know is before Visual Code, so keep that in mind. I'm not making any argument about who started what. No, I mean, and when I originally installed it a few years ago, I've found it like it just took over my whole laptop and just was slow and didn't run well, and it just sort of bloated everything, and like my experience yesterday was much better. It was slicker.
Also, I think it depends on what kind of OS you're on. So if you're on Windows, it probably has to install a lot more because a lot of the tools that it uses is like open source stuff. So when you install it on a Mac, it's really easy. It's just drag and drop your thing into your applications and you're done. Yeah. So that's so why I put Atom in here was because at some point I used a lot of Text Wrangler, which is an application for Mac. Basically just a text header, but it also has like highlighting for code. So if I would get like a log file or a XML file for somebody who sent a message or whatever, then I could look into that
Yep.
and see what's going
Yep.
on, right? And that was because Text Wrangler was very good at that. Right? I could have like thousands of files open. I
Mhm.
could have like really large, like megabytes or even hundreds of megabytes long text files that I could open up, like CSVs or something that needed to be imported. And that was really great until recently when Text Wrangler stopped working well on Mac.
Oh, really?
Because they switched file systems. And that caused some issues with Text Wrangler. So I had to switch. And I thought that I bought Text Wrangler at some point through the App Store. And I paid like money for it. But apparently it never was. But so it was kind of a Mandela effect there. So I tweeted about it, and it turned out that BB Edit, which is like bare bones
software, yep.
editor that's been around for a long time, and that's free.
That's what I use.
I'm considering buying it now.
That's what I use to write HTML.
Anyway, so BB Edit was really good. So it's basically a replacement for me for Text Wrangler. But before I went to BB Edit, I switched over to Atom for a bit. I did use it. There were some quirks. Like it really tries to be a project editor. Like it really wants you to open up a directory and treat it like a project. Yeah. Well, I was really looking for something that would do code highlighting and some editing and maybe some auto-completion, but not like take over something like a directory like a project, because I don't want it to take over my desktop as a project.
Right. And it's not so good. Like Visual Studio wants you to, you can just edit a file, but it wants to put it into like a solution and a project, right?
Yeah.
And because that's what it's a full complete tool for those kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where, for me, Visual Code comes in. It's very Atom-like, but again, I think they took the same kind of notes. Is they built a tooling framework environment, and then you can just plug whatever languages you want into it, and whatever highlighting and minifiers and beautifying and deminifiers and performance analytic things and all that stuff you can just toss on top of it. And so Visual Code has been really fantastic for me on that, and I use it like a glorified text editor that understands languages. So I can throw in the Oracle PL SQL thing and the SQL beautifier and all that stuff, and I can take these clunky things that like people at work write and throw that in there and beautify it, and it restructures it so it's readable. Right, and it handles the code highlighting because someone built the extension to tell it how to understand the language, right? And then I can do JavaScript, JSON, and whatever it is. I can do my multi-caret cursor stuff. I can do the find and replace. Someone built a diff tool, so you can do a diff tool between files or directories, and it does that really well in that interface. Someone took it so far that they took the general Visual Studio Code framework and they plugged in a connection for databases, and I use that for connecting up for SQL databases. I wish they made one for Oracle. It does for like MySQL and does all the other things, but doesn't do Oracle. And I wish they did, because then I would totally use it at work over the hundreds of thousands of dollars per head tool that we use at work that the company doesn't want to pay for anymore. And I understand, because those things cost a lot of money. They'd rather use the free tool that like Oracle provides, which is understandable. Yeah. But Toad does a really good job where the free Oracle tool doesn't. And, it's a pulled license, right? It costs the company a lot of money. It just does. So
seems like there is room for a tool, like room for another open source project.
Yeah, well, I mean, so in the SQL Studio Operations tool that I was talking about a moment ago, it's doing all those same things just for free, and it's doing with a really lightweight framework mechanism that's also cross-platform. So it's kind of hard to argue with that when it does it really effectively. And there's been things like Hive, SQL, and stuff like that. There's lots of other like free workspace tools, for databases. But that was just explaining like the power of taking that framework and then plugging something completely different in there that isn't for code but is for development efforts. And that's just an example of a cross-platform mechanism that is free. And if you want the Monaco HTML editor, you can just go to the Monaco GitHub project and just download it and integrate an HTML editor in your situation in your app. So, for
MySQL stuff, we use what's the name of that thing again? I keep forgetting the. I shared it with you a while ago.
What is it? Something cat.
Navicat. Yeah. So that's pretty good. It crashes a lot though. That's kind of an issue.
But I looked at that thing and I go,
for what it does.
I would love to use this for. But I can't use it for the one thing. Oh, by the way, costs a bunch of money. Costs about as much as a Toad license. So it's like, then I would just use the free version of Toad.
That's one of the things that I've been thinking about, like building applications, but like on a cross-platform application, and like doing something like this for databases, like getting something really intelligent, like really good, but like free, right? It's something way better than MySQL Workbench, because that's a piece of shit.
Yeah, I tried using it.
It's free, but it's so bad.
Yeah, I the Oracle version of Toad is based on Java, and it's real kind of clunky, and it does some good things really well. But it's just got these clunky manners. I hate it. And then there was one day I installed MySQL because I needed to do something database-like, but I needed to control over a server so I can create my own tables and do whatever this makeshift work I needed so I could export it. So I installed MySQL and then Workbench, and Workbench is sort of, I don't know, it's just real confusing. So I downloaded, because it was free from Quest Software, basically the MySQL version of Toad. And it was like night and day, amazing, free. And it does all the same kind of things, but it wasn't clunky. It's like they reinvented their UI, and it was for free. And it was just amazing. And I used it, connected up MySQL, and I was like, oh, awesome. And my purpose wasn't for a commercial use case. It was for working out some data for something. And that's how I used it. And so I was like, I wish our backends were there, not with Oracle, so that I could make this connection with better tools. So yeah. So anyhow, getting off that that tangent.
So we got the lower level editors like BB Edit / Text Wrangler for me, right? That's mostly for me. Because it does some syntax highlighting and stuff like that, and it can handle big files.
Sure, right, and that was the big thing. Is
handling big files is hard in an IDE because they can like really get really
Visual
slow.
Studio handled it pretty well for me, no problem. I found that like your code editors, they usually handle large files much better than your default Notepad memo taking app came with your OS, because those things aren't designed for those kind of volumes.
Yeah,
I know that.
But don't try to edit a gig sized file into a into an
also, you get your themes with things like Visual Code, and I assume also Atom has its code, its themes and file icons.
Well, I haven't tried opening up really large files in Atom.
I don't think I have either,
because I got back to the bare bones editors really fast because they were like really good. So if you like get a chance, go check out BB Edit if you use a Mac. If you're using Atom or something like that right now, go check out BB Edit. It's
good. It's been around forever.
For price, there's a price involved, but there's a free version you can use. You get a trial for like the premium version first, and then you go to the free version. I'm considering buying it because I like it so much. I thought I bought Text Wrangler in the past, but apparently I didn't. So I don't
BB
know.
Edit I used back in 1992, 93 in its very early days. It was my go-to tool. Because it just did a better job. I don't know if it had shift blocking or anything back then. I'm sure it's got to right now. My go-to tool typically, if I'm sort of scratch padding out actual code and I care about like code highlighting and double checking brackets and some code completion stuff, I will go to a more of a code editor versus a text editor. But I also use something called Notepad 2, which is basically a code capable, a large volume size capable text editor. It does syntax highlighting. It will find the other end and syntax highlight the end of your curly bracket or your square bracket or your quotes or whatever it is. This is great when you're doing JavaScript. So it's smart in that way, and you can kind of customize it. And the one thing is I figured out one day, someone figured it out, then I tweaked it, but I figured out how to give it a dark theme. Its design is not to be a dark theme, but I can turn it in by doing that, and I did that, and that's how I run with it. I know a lot of people use a version of something like that, like Notepad plus plus plus, or two pluses, whatever it is.
Two pluses.
Yeah, and I never really got into it. I never really liked it. It's okay. It kind of sits in the world where it's like a notepad for people who also like need a scratch pad for something, like they're going to work out their MATLAB equations or something, and then they go and then they chunk that into MATLAB and run their simulations. So Notepad++ is good. I just kind of prefer something lighter weight and something simpler, and that's what I use Notepad 2. But the one caveat here is I download the zip file and I kind of manually put it in my program files and make my shortcuts to it directly instead of letting it replace Notepad. Because sometimes I do want to use Notepad in Windows because it's such a very simple, straightforward editor. It doesn't detect rich text. So I can scrub stuff from all like curly brackets and junk. I can just cut and paste into that thing, do something real quick, cut and paste out of it. So I use Notepad and Notepad 2. I predominantly use Notepad 2, which is, I didn't create a link from, but it's from Flow's freeware, FLO. I can find a link if we need. If anyone's interested, you can reach out to either of us, and I'll get you connected up. But it's
or just Google
it.
The
funny thing is, I was listening to a podcast from somebody who's definitely like a de facto expert or something, and this guy was saying just off the top of his head, he's like, oh yeah, no, I've been you basically use, and he hit all the same three things I use the most of: Visual Studio, Visual Code, and Notepad 2. I was like, see, I'm not the only one who's insane who's doing this. And
maybe you're both insane. You just don't.
Yeah, it's very possible. But I use Notepad 2 for Scratchpad, not just for code stuff. I got lots of support things that people bug me with and edit.
Well, I do the show notes for like the episode of Polymatic every time. I just drop it into Text Wrangler or BB Edit just to clean up some stuff and getting all the links ready.
You see most people have like, you see someone who does Linux, Unix, whatever it is, you'll see they have like 4 or 5 terminals open everywhere. Me, I literally, at work, I have 3 monitors. The main monitor has 2 notepads split down the screen vertically. Then Visual Studio.
That's the cool thing about BB Edit, right? So if you look at Text Wrangler and BB Edit, you can have multiple files open in the same window, which is like really good because on the left side there's all the files that you have open, and you have a lot of untitled files open because you open up a new tab every time you need something new and then forget about it, and then it just leaves it open.
That's what Visual Code does for me. It lets me have multiple tabs like that, and then multiple tabs that are dedicated to like knowing SQL or JSON or XML. Or combined thereof, right? And if there's not an extension that comes by default, you could just go through its extensions list and install one. There's lots of them. It's a pretty
So
good community.
we have two others on the list here: Brackets and Sublime. I know Sublime because a colleague used to use it because he really loved that editor. It turns out that the editor was putting some extra characters in some notes and code and stuff. So we had some issues with that. So that's how I know Sublime, and that's why I don't like it, because it did that.
So here's another thing that's kind of important to point out with a lot of your IDEs, your code editors, and your text editors. So between Windows and Unix, there's different handling with line feeds and carriage returns, or carriage returns plus line feeds, right? So there's like Unix encoding versions and Windows encoding versions of these things. And usually these tools understand that kind of thing. And help you there, and then even allow you to like turn on your white space indicators and your tab and your carriage returns line feed
or switch between the different line feed characters,
and allow you to set your preferences for saving. And your default like text editor is just not going to do that. It's going to do whatever it's programmed to do.
Although Notepad does.
Does it really?
I think so.
I know that they're creating what's coming is a dark theme is in the works for Notepad for Windows. So they're going to make it a little bit more complete code capable editor aside from the Notepad. But I don't really know.
I know the default Mac editor can switch between different
maybe
line
it's possible. Notepad has been very much like just carried forward until recently. There's been, I know internally in Microsoft, the interest is to make it a little bit better tool for how everyone uses it. And then like the sticky notes, like I don't use those things at all. I think it's sort of like
those are horrible.
Yeah, like but one of the things that's kind of nice about it, one of the things that's coming in probably, I guess for the rest of the world, December release for Windows, is if you do use that, you can enable it to be synchronized so that you can synchronize your notes, your sticky notes across everywhere. Now, I would hope that maybe Notepad doesn't have that kind of feature, because I don't know that I want it to do that, right? If I'm using it as a scratch pad, I don't need to synchronize it across like, a dozen devices. I don't think it's important.
Yeah.
But the point is that these kind of tools were meant for a simple purpose, and they've become more complex because people use them that way. And so Sublime is a tool that like I thought about grabbing, but it's like a $75 tool to use for it to be useful. And I was like, oh, well, what's the Sublime thing? I want to know if this is a good code editor. But at this point, I got Visual Studio Code. It does all the things, and it's free, and it does a lot of stuff, and so I don't need to spend $75 for Sublime. But I hear it's a great tool, though.
Do you go on like terminals? Do you ever go onto servers that you have to go log into, or is it just mostly GUI based on the Windows side?
Do I need to like SSH into things? Is that what you're asking?
Does the Windows environment, like the Visual Studio stuff, like you write stuff for servers, right?
Yeah, I write stuff for servers and front ends, back ends. Yeah.
Okay, so do you have to get into servers sometimes? Do you have to log in and then look at what like log files are doing, or
sure
a certain configuration is? Do you log into the machine, and is there like a GUI that you use, or is it something that like a terminal?
So you can do one of two things, and it depends on security rules and whatever. If you want a telnet, you want SSH. More SSH is more of the thing. You can do that, and you can just use command lines, right?
Okay. And is there like a text-based editor for like a command line?
There really isn't. Not with,
because on Windows it used to be like edit, like on
sure
DOS,
you can get like a raw
edit
thing, and it's nothing like VI or Emacs. You can install things that do exactly just that. Put it in the common path, common environment variable, and then yes, you could do Vim or Emacs for Windows and those kind of environments. But the likelier situation is you'll remote connect to the desktop. It creates a remote, basically X Windows session, right? But it's the modern version, like a Citrix session. You aren't controlling someone like they can watch you playing around the monitor. You create a virtual connection in, you RDP in, and then what you do is you use it like you have it at your desk. And you open up your Notepad or Visual Code's present, you can install that thing and do it there too, or you can whatever it is you want to do, depending on your administrative rights, if you have it at all. Likelihood is if you are doing that, you likely are an admin, so you have full tilt rights to the environment, and then you can run your Notepad or whatever it is and do your code updating or whatever it is. But also in Windows, you can also pre-compile your stuff, and there isn't really a lot of source code for you to like recompile on the fly.
No, but you might like maybe look at a config file.
Oh, sure, yeah, you can definitely do that. And in that case, you can just drag and drop that in Notepad and do your thing, save the file back. Yeah.
So for me, I also maintain a lot of the servers for the company, so I have to log into the machines, and they're mostly Linux, of course. So I usually use VI or Vim because it's the VI improved.
Oh, is that what it is?
There is when you install like a bare bones Debian version, you get VI. Like the default version of VI is like the basic VI, and that's horrible. Like none of the like arrow keys and stuff work. It's like really, really, really bad. So if you I usually install Vim straight away. And there's like a colleague of mine that used to work with. He really liked Joe for some reason.
Never heard
like
that.
is really his best editor. There's Nano. I use that for like the default cron job editor on Debian. For some reason gets set as that, so you have to use that one. It's okay. I really like the shortcuts for VI, so sometimes even in like PHP Storm, I'll be like escape : WQ exclamation mark, just to write the file. And oh wait, no, I don't have to do this. Just have to press Command S. Done.
And if you do like that stuff, like one of the things someone made, and it's popular, someone has made a Vim extension for Visual Code, so you could just boom and then use Vim in there. Like, okay, whatever. I don't know why you would do that, but okay. But if you do like your keyboard shortcuts, you can rewire them however you want. So, but that's also what brings up Emacs, right? Known for its.
But that's the thing. I don't really use.
Yeah,
Emacs.
But that's also.
I've seen people use it, and they're like really religious about it. I'm like, okay, I don't care.
It's those.
Good that you like this editor, but you're trying to do a very large project. We had like some people over from another company. I think I could talk about this now, but like one of the guys, he was really into Emacs, needed everything on Emacs, and he had a MacBook, like had a MacBook, working on a MacBook and working in Emacs all the time, and like he had an IDE that he could use, but he didn't use it, and like he just had to use Emacs. I'm like, okay, dude, you're really hampering yourself here. Because it does speed up your coding a lot.
Sure, and I think a lot of the IDEs, they have some rich features in there, and like I said, depending on it's really more about the individual than it is about the tool. Sometimes it can really do damage to the individual having any interest to be a better developer or programmer.
But it saves you a lot of time. But it can save you a lot of time. I think that.
Yeah.
All right, and I understand that like you can be tough as nails and be like the guy that knows the entire project out of his head, and I've done that. I still know that whole project in my head. It's still in there, and I can still find myself in there and find the line for this thing. And,
but I'm sure
and get it fixed, right? But it's like, yeah, that's great, but like if you could just search for it in your project, like you'll be done and autocomplete your whole thing. I mean, that will save you so much time.
I think everyone works differently because there's got to be a person out there who could probably put you to shame with their Emacs usage. Everyone is different. Like, I think the big thing that a lot of people who like Emacs is because it has all these little macro things. There's a little keyboard shortcut stuff that like boom and build things really rapidly with it. And once you get to know it and like it, you use it. For me, I was never into it. I think when I think about it, I was thinking about it this whole time. I think VI is what I was using when I was building, like, and it was actually, I found it easier for me to just use BB Edit, write all the things I want, right? It was just much easier. Save the file and upload it.
Yeah, some people are going to be like really upset with me for not liking Emacs, but hey, they can go and do whatever.
But
they want.
in the same respect, I don't know. I think you gotta know your tools, but you should also really know what you're doing. I think that's what my core message is there. You really should know what the garbage that you're looking at should be. You should know what your sausage is made up of. Right? You should have an idea how it's made and what's actually in it. And that's how you'll be able to read the reigning code coming out of the matrix.
Well, there's people that can't really do without their IDE, right? So I could write the scripts that I need to write in close to the same time without the IDE. I can open up VI and start writing my project. I can do that. I can even switch between files in VI. It's just like I can do that. It's a lot more convenient to do it in like an IDE where I have my project and I have like all the code completion for the thing and find the classes that I need and don't have to remember the classes, the namespaces for everything, and like they'll do it for me. And if I complete it and then I don't have to type extra code, it saves me a lot of time and I can do things faster, which is more productive for me and saves me money or the company money in some cases.
So while we were ranting about code editors, we've been doing a while, but I think this is probably a good topic for a lot of people. So brackets, I don't know. I think that might have been, might not be available anymore. I think that was Adobe sort of like, I think Atom came around.
I don't think I ever used
Omni
that.
Sharp was another one. And there's a couple like other like, we're going to create our own IDE, which keep in mind, it's not an easy thing to do. Especially when they are really comprehensive tools today. And it's also, I think I can understand if you go get involved like, well, Visual Studio seems to be the best thing for me, or PHP Storm is the best thing, right? And you install it, it might be too complex. It takes a moment to understand all that it can do. And once you understand, you can utilize its power. But brackets was the thing that was made, I think, by Adobe. It was okay. It was the same kind of problem I had with Atom. It was like ate up my system, and it was like not really providing a lot of what I wanted. And eventually, Visual Studio Code came around, and so like I will use that as a scratch pad to just go create a new JavaScript file. And I won't save it there, but I'll start doing it. I'll start writing my JavaScript function, whatever it is. I'll work it out. I'll throw it into Chrome. I'll test it out real time. Okay, and I was like, okay, good. Copy paste into the actual main like JavaScript file that is for my project in Visual Studio, and then I'm good to go. So like I use Visual Code and Studio together, and even like in the case of like front end stuff, I'll use I'll do a little coding, ad hoc coding in the dev tools in Chrome as well. So I use all these features, and they are tools to be used. While I hear people can use code editors to do complete front end coding projects, back end coding projects even, that's fine. These are fantastic. IDEs are going to give you a little more complete stuff. They're also going to give you lots of wizardry too, so you got to be careful about that. And I think that is, aside from like, the terminal-based editors, there's a lot of that too, right? So I think it's the tool that that really makes a huge difference. There are a ton of things in Visual Studio that I just don't use. But here's the one thing I will give you, John. So what I do is when I'm definitely at work, right? I set up a local server on my my laptop, and I emulate what it's going to look like. Obviously not the same kind of quality of hardware, but basically like production, right? Or I'm connecting to dev database or something like that. And so one of the things I can do with Visual Studio, especially because it's accessible, it's locally on my laptop, or maybe if I set up a remote mechanism to like a VM on my on my laptop, I can attach to the related worker process for the back end or the front end or both. And so what I can do is I can real-time debug as I'm going through stuff, and then I can get my environmentals and my intermediates, and I can look at all the interactives, and I can see what all the messaging and environmentals are plugging through at the server level. And then if I have a problem, I can debug that way. And I can see, all right, so the reason there was an exception, and it was because it's malformed SQL, or because these following environments, where I can explore and look at the real-time analytics real time. And so that's one of the things an IDE will do for you, and most code editors won't necessarily have attachments like that. So you got to keep that in mind, that there is some value for an IDE. IDEs will allow you to do, especially when you've set up a local environment where you can attach two processes or daemons or whatever it is, and you can actually see what's going on through your stepping through your code.
Anyway, so let's link some stuff. We had some things that we'd like to share with you. We have Visual Studio Code, Polymatic.media/OH. Some Visual Studio Code goodies, Polymatic.media/OI.
Yeah, this is a guy who curated a bunch of links and things that he's found over time. Like, basically, I kind of agree with the person, which is just install Visual Code already. Just do it. Why your head is hesitating?
No, I will not.
Well, you on a Mac side, you're probably not likely, your disposition is not to, period. It's Microsoft. I don't want to do that.
Well, you can get into a very large discussion here if you're not careful.
Yeah, I understand. But I mean, I get that. I get people have a disposition about it, but just because it's made by does not mean it's necessarily bad.
Anyway, next one is Polymatic.link/OL, which is JetBrains, just their website. They do a lot of different editors for different languages and stuff. And then PHP Storm specifically, Polymatic.link/OM. And then Atom.io. You can just type in Atom.io or just go to Polymatic.link/ON.
Okay, awesome.
For that. Okay, then we got some stuff to share, right?
Yeah, look, if anyone's got editors that you love, and just reach out to us, let us know.
If you're an Emacs fan, don't email.
Don't email John.
Just don't.
I think Paul of OG, I think he's an Emacs fan. I think he loves it. Customized it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well.
But let's talk about some other things that aren't they might be dorky, but they aren't code related.
No, they're definitely dorky. So I saw this recently. I think everybody is.
Yeah, I think everyone has.
/OG, Detective Pikachu pool.
Yeah, I've seen two reactions. I've seen you know what? That looks terrible. I want to see it. And I've looked like, oh my god, they don't understand Pokemon canon and the whole lore, and then Ryan Reynolds, I hate it. So I've seen.
This is like a Deadpool Pokemon movie.
It's basically Ryan Reynolds is Pikachu's voice.
Yeah.
And if you immediately object to that, then don't bother watching the trailer. But I looked at this thing and I'm like, why do we need this? And then I was like, you know what? That might be fun. And I'm not so attached to Pokemon that I care. So but I'm not sure that I need to see it in the theater whenever it comes out.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll.
Do you ever play any of the games?
No, I never did. Aside from Go, I played Go, Pokemon Go, and that doesn't count.
Yeah.
But I understand.
So, of course, who doesn't have this on their phone?
Yeah, I understand. And it's because I've seen the anime, and I have so many people around me who talk about it, and then they can name all 5,000 Pokemon. So I get it. I totally get it. But I never really played the games. I just never did.
I was thinking of getting the Let's Go Pikachu, Let's Go Eevee game for Switch because I have a Switch and I don't have that many games for it. So I thought maybe it could be a good game to play, really not to get too deep into it, right? Because I bought Diablo 3 for the Switch
how was that?
And haven't touched it actually because I've already played through Diablo.
Right.
And it's like, yeah, this is a little bit different. It doesn't really feel that good, you know. We'll have to do an episode about games again soon, somewhere. But I'm thinking about getting that game. I don't know. It's $60, man.
Look, people who love it will tell you they love it, and I mean that's a combination of. Could be a combination of anything, really, but it could be a combination of their love for Pokemon, or it could be a combination of the fact that it's probably really good. But I haven't heard bad things about the game, so.
Yeah, it has like a high rating. But then again, that could also be like a fanboy,
a biased perspective,
fanboy thing, yeah. So yeah, maybe. Anyway, Polymatic link /OG for Detective Pikachu.
Yeah. I don't know. It looks like it might be a fun movie, but I don't know if it's worth killing myself to go see it.
Also, a waste of an OG, of a Polymatic link.
I know. I saw that. I'm like, darn, going to use it for something else. But anyhow, so moving along. So this is Tom Scott. He also has some side accounts, but he created a little animated feature. There's like a running joke with him. I don't know if it's just the running joke or if it's he truly hates Christmas, but he made a little animated feature where it's like Sam kills Christmas. It's pretty good. It's really good, actually. And I know Thanksgiving hasn't happened here in the U.S., but whatever. I mean, you know, every store around here is playing Christmas music already. They're just skipping right over Thanksgiving aside from the turkeys they want to sell you. So, Polymatic.link /OJ.
It's like the stores they went from Halloween to like Halloween is over, November 1st, poof, everything is Christmas.
Yeah. And actually, so I got some music, right? And this would have been the perfect one for Polymatic.link /OG, but this is Polymatic.link /OK. So there's been new music, but really most of the music I've been listening to lately is like artists that I'm kind of reinvesting more into their newer songs. So Orla came out with a new song. She's sort of on tour. Well, she's pausing on the tour, but she'll be back on tour soon. But she was, I don't know if she was in the Netherlands when she filmed this or not. But they did this in between things. The song is called Between My Teeth. It sounds like that title sounds like that's not really a great title, but when you listen to the song, understand what it's about. I think it makes a lot of sense. So it's just her new song. It's just an acoustic version. They just threw together a music video when they were, on tour. Polymatic.link /OK. John, I don't expect it to be your thing.
Actually, I missed this link, so I didn't.
Oh, you didn't listen to it. Yeah, this song basically is like when someone is emotionally leaning on you too hard, and like everything has a lot to do with like how you respond and how you relate to people. Between my teeth, like don't put your heart between my teeth, right? So.
Okay. So, Alan, are you still rocking that Mastodon?
I am.
Thing?
Yep. I still am. Alan
where's that?
JAWNS.club over at Mastodon.
Yeah.
It's
or on Twitter.
And I'm still on Twitter. CHAESS.
The cesspool.
CHAESS. If you really want to contact me, because really, honestly, who cares about social media?
Yeah, it's been getting worse and worse.
Yeah.
Anyway, so you can find me on Twitter, twitter.com/webdevie. And for feedback, you can reach us at podcast@Polymatic.media. And I'm kind of upset that nobody mailed in about, the things that we got wrong last episode. The music in this episode is by Seuns, which you can find at Polymatic.link /EK. Our Twitter is ThePolymatic. Our website is Polymatic.media. And I hope you tune in next time.